This is HOA Violation Vault. The evidence binder came out before the apology did. I love paperwork, and you are giving me a reason. Dawn Fletcher shoved a phone screen toward me, screaming that the audit log proved I accessed something, without letting me read it. Her voice hit that sharp register that cuts through walls, and two people in the management lobby waiting area looked up from their phones. I stood there with my sealed evidence bag in one hand and my own phone in the other, already recording, because this was the third time in 2 weeks she had cornered me with a new accusation. I work as a union electrician in Milwaukee. I live at Riverstone Neighborhood Association, a high-density townhome complex where parking is a constant war, and the architectural committee has more power than any human being should possess. Dawn Fletcher is an architectural committee member at Riverstone. She is also the most vindictive person I have ever met in my life. She wears a gray blazer like armor, carries a folder organizer with expanding pockets everywhere she goes, and repeats the same line every time she corners someone. I am the one who decides what counts. She said it to me the first time we spoke, when I asked about the guest parking rules, and she has said it at least a dozen times since. The specific inciting incident that kicked all of this off was a package locker door left ajar in the mail cluster 3 weeks ago. I walked past it on my way to check my own box, noticed the door was open about 2 inches, and pulled it shut, because that is what you do when you see something like that. I did not think about it again until Dawn showed up at my door 2 days later with a clipboard in a clear sleeve like it was evidence, and told me she had video proof I forced the locker open and stole the contents. I told her I did not force anything. I told her I closed a door that was already open. She told me the audit log showed I accessed the locker, and the resident whose package went missing filed a complaint. I asked to see the audit log. She refused. She told me I could appeal through the portal if I thought she was wrong, but she already knew what the decision would be. I went home and filed the appeal that same night. I attached a written statement, uploaded a photo of my own locker door for reference, and hit submit at 9:14 in the evening. The portal sent me a confirmation email. I saved a screenshot of the confirmation page. I saved the email. I printed both. I have worked enough job sites to know that when someone is looking for a reason to nail you, you keep receipts. Dawn came back 4 days later. She knocked hard, 3 times fast, and when I opened the door, she was standing there with her folder organizer and a bright orange traffic cone she set down on my walkway like she owned the sidewalk. She told me the appeal never went through. She told me the portal had no record of it. She told me I was lying and that my behavior was escalating. I pulled out my phone and showed her the confirmation screenshot. She barely looked at it. She told me screenshots can be faked and that the portal timestamps are the only official record. Then she told me she was reporting me to police, and she started performing for her phone camera, narrating into the screen about a hostile resident who was refusing to cooperate with the investigation. I stayed calm. I asked her what investigation. She ignored me and kept filming. I stepped back inside and closed the door. That was escalation step 1. Escalation step 2 came 3 days later when Dawn sent me a certified letter demanding I pay $275 immediately or she would start lien steps against my property. The letter listed 3 separate violations: unauthorized locker access, refusal to cooperate with committee inquiry, failure to respond to official correspondence. I had responded. I had the confirmation email. I had the screenshot. But according to Dawn, none of that existed. She claimed the portal never received my appeal, even though it did. That is the core lie she repeated over and over. Your appeal was never filed. The system shows nothing. You never responded. I called the management office. The receptionist told me she could not access committee records and that I needed to speak with Dawn directly. I told her I had tried. She told me to email Dawn and copy the general management address. I did that. Dawn replied within an hour. Her email was 2 sentences. The portal log is clear. Payment is due by Friday, or the matter will proceed to legal action. No acknowledgement of my evidence, no explanation of the discrepancy, just a deadline and a threat. I have a friend who works in property management in another state. Her name is Jen, and she has dealt with every kind of HOA nonsense you can imagine. I called her on speaker and explained the situation. She told me to document everything, keep all emails, and do not pay anything until I had a full accounting of what I was supposedly being charged for. She told me that if the portal had a bug or if someone was deleting records on the back end, that was a liability issue for the management company, not for me. She also told me to check if the HOA had any written procedure for handling disputes, because most associations are required to follow their own rules, and if they skip steps, that can void their enforcement action. I pulled up the Riverstone bylaws on the resident portal. It took me 20 minutes to find the relevant section. The HOA must accept video evidence under a written procedure. Residents have the right to submit documentation and receive a response within 10 business days. Committees may not impose fines without a hearing if the resident disputes the violation. I read it twice. I printed it. I highlighted the key sentences. Then I noticed something else. The portal had a feature that showed recent logins and activity timestamps. I clicked into my account history. My appeal submission was listed. It showed the date, the time, and the file attachments. But when I tried to click through to view the submission itself, the page returned an error. File not found. I refreshed. Same error. I logged out and logged back in. Same error. I took a screenshot of the error message. I took a screenshot of the activity log showing the submission timestamp. Then I opened the confirmation email again and took another screenshot showing the sent time and the unique reference number. I had 3 pieces of proof that I submitted the appeal. The portal was either broken or someone had deleted my file on purpose. Either way, the problem was not on my end. That weekend I ran into a neighbor at the mailbox cluster. Her name is Claire, and she lives 2 buildings over. She was checking her mail when I walked up. She saw me and immediately said, "I heard what happened with the locker thing. I heard Dawn is saying you broke in." I told her that was not true. She nodded. She told me Dawn had been on a tear lately and that 2 other residents had complained about missing items from the clubhouse storage closet. She told me one guy filed a police report because his electric drill went missing, and the only people with keys to the storage closet were committee members. She told me the guy confronted Dawn about it, and Dawn told him he must have lost the drill himself, and that the HOA was not responsible for personal items left in common areas, even though the storage closet was specifically designated for resident tool storage in the bylaws. Claire told me she had seen Dawn going into the clubhouse late at night twice in the last month. She told me it was after 10 both times, and that Dawn was carrying shopping bags. She told me she thought it was weird but did not say anything because Dawn is the kind of person who will make your life hell if you question her. I asked Claire if she would be willing to write down what she saw and sign it. She hesitated. Then she said yes, but only if I promised not to tell Dawn it came from her. I promised. She sent me a typed statement that night with the dates and approximate times she saw Dawn at the clubhouse. Monday morning, I went to the management office in person. I brought my printed evidence folder. I brought the bylaws section I had highlighted. I brought Claire's statement. The receptionist at the front desk told me Dawn was not in the office. I told her I needed to speak with someone in management about a dispute. She told me the property manager was in a meeting. I told her I would wait. She looked uncomfortable. She told me it might be a while. I sat down in the waiting area. 20 minutes later, Dawn walked in through the front door. She saw me immediately. She walked straight over. She did not sit down. She stood in front of me and told me I needed to leave because I was trespassing on HOA property. I told her I was a resident and I had every right to be in the management office. She told me my access privileges were suspended pending resolution of the investigation. I asked her what authority she had to suspend my access. She told me the architectural committee has discretionary enforcement power under the bylaws. I pulled out my printed bylaws excerpt and showed her the section that said residents must be given notice and a hearing before access suspension. She glanced at the page. She told me that only applies to common amenity access, not to the management office itself. I told her the management office is listed as a common facility in the site map. She told me I was misinterpreting the policy. Then she told me she could make this official with one phone call. That is when things went public. Dawn raised her voice loud enough that everyone in the waiting area could hear. She told the receptionist that I was refusing to leave after being asked. She told the receptionist to call security. The receptionist looked panicked. She told Dawn that we do not have on-site security and that she should probably call the property manager instead. Dawn ignored her. She pulled out her phone and started recording me again. She narrated into the camera that I was harassing her in the management office and creating a hostile environment. I stayed seated. I kept my voice calm. I told her I was here to submit documentation related to a dispute and that I had every right to do that under the HOA procedures. She told me the only documentation that matters is what the portal shows, and the portal shows I never filed an appeal. A neighbor who is already recording when Karen starts yelling stepped through the front door right at that moment. His name is Marcus, and he lives in my building. He had his phone out and he was filming before he even walked in. He told me later he saw Dawn's car in the lot and figured something was about to go down. He stood near the door and recorded the whole thing. Dawn did not notice him at first. She was too focused on me. She kept saying the same lines. You never filed an appeal. The system has no record. You are in violation. I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshot folder. I held my screen up so the receptionist could see it. I told the receptionist I was showing her proof that I submitted the appeal and that the portal either had a technical issue or someone deleted my file. Dawn stepped between me and the receptionist. She told me to put my phone away. She told me I was disrupting office operations. Then she walked over to the receptionist and tried to force staff to print a public notice about me. She told the receptionist to print a violation notice and post it on the community bulletin board so other residents would know I was under investigation. The receptionist looked at Dawn. She looked at me. She told Dawn she was not authorized to post notices without property manager approval. Dawn told her to do it anyway. The receptionist refused. Dawn told her she would report her to corporate for insubordination. The receptionist picked up the desk phone and called the property manager. The property manager came out 2 minutes later. Her name is Linda, and she looked like she had been in back-to-back meetings all morning. She asked what was going on. Dawn started talking immediately. She told Linda I was trespassing and harassing her and refusing to leave after being told my access was suspended. Linda asked me for my side. I handed her my folder. I showed her the portal confirmation screenshot, the email, the activity log, the error message, and the bylaws excerpt. I told her I submitted an appeal 3 weeks ago and the system confirmed receipt, but now Dawn is saying it never went through and the file is missing. Linda looked at the documents. She looked at Dawn. She told Dawn we needed to have a private conversation in her office. Dawn told her there was nothing to discuss. Linda told her it was not optional. They went into the back office. Marcus walked over to me and showed me his phone. He had recorded the entire lobby confrontation from the moment he walked in. He told me he also had doorbell camera footage from the night of the locker incident. He told me his unit faces the mail cluster and his camera picks up movement in that area. He told me he pulled the footage after he heard Dawn was accusing people of breaking into lockers. He told me the footage shows Dawn at the mail cluster at 11:30 that night, which was 2 hours after I closed the ajar locker door and went home. He told me the footage shows her using a key to open multiple lockers and pulling out packages. I stared at him. I asked him if he was serious. He nodded. He told me he was going to take it to management, but he wanted to talk to me first because Dawn had been targeting me specifically, and he figured I should know. He airdropped the video file to my phone right there in the lobby. I opened it. The footage was grainy, but clear enough. Timestamp showed 11:27 in the evening. Dawn walks up to the mail cluster. She is carrying a shopping bag. She pulls out a key ring. She opens one locker, reaches in, pulls out a small package, and puts it in the shopping bag. She moves to the next locker. Same thing. She opens a third locker. She pulls out a padded mailer. She tears it open right there, looks inside, takes something out, and drops the torn mailer on the ground. Then she walks away. I looked at Marcus. I told him this was huge. He told me he knew. He told me he also checked the portal after Dawn started the rumor blast in the neighborhood chat to destroy my reputation, and he noticed the same thing I did. His complaint submissions were showing in the activity log, but when he tried to open them, he got file not found errors. He told me he thinks Dawn has admin access to the portal, and she is deleting anything that makes her look bad. He told me the tow vendor admits Karen has been calling in favors and skipping required steps, and that he heard from another resident that Dawn got someone towed last month without sending the required 72-hour notice. He told me the resident is filing a complaint with the management company and possibly a lawsuit. Linda came back out. Dawn was not with her. Linda told me she reviewed the documentation and she was opening an internal investigation into the portal issue and the missing appeal file. She told me the $275 fine was on hold pending the investigation outcome. She told me my access privileges were not suspended and that I was welcome in the management office anytime during business hours. She told me if I had any additional evidence I wanted to submit, I should email it to her directly. I told her I had doorbell camera footage. She told me to send it. I told her I also had a witness statement about Dawn accessing the clubhouse late at night. She told me to send that too. Then she told me she could not discuss personnel matters, but that she took the situation seriously, and there would be consequences if the investigation found policy violations. Dawn walked out of the back office. She did not look at me. She walked straight to the front door and left. Linda watched her go. Then she looked at me and told me to keep records of any further contact from Dawn, and to let her know immediately if Dawn tried to retaliate. I thanked her. Marcus and I walked out together. He told me he was going to post the doorbell footage in the neighborhood chat. I told him to wait. I told him I wanted to get everything lined up first, so that when it went public, it was airtight. He agreed. That was Monday. Tuesday, I got a call from a tow company. The driver told me my vehicle was flagged for tow due to expired guest parking, and that he was in the lot right now. I told him I did not have a guest vehicle, and that my car was parked in my assigned spot. He told me the work order listed my unit number and described my car. I ran outside. The tow truck was parked behind my car with the lights on. The driver was standing next to it looking at a clipboard. I asked him who called in the tow. He told me the HOA did. I asked him for documentation. He showed me the work order. It was printed on Riverstone letterhead with no readable text in the body, but the unit number and vehicle description were clear. I told him there was a mistake. I told him my car was in my assigned spot, and I had documentation proving it. He told me he was just following the work order and that I needed to take it up with the HOA. I called Linda. She did not answer. I left a voicemail. I called the main office line. The receptionist told me Linda was out of the office for the day. I asked her who authorized the tow. She told me she did not have access to that information. I told her this was an emergency and that my car was about to be towed illegally. She told me she would try to reach Linda and call me back. I stood next to my car. The tow driver told me he had 3 other jobs and he needed to either tow the car or clear the call. I told him I was not letting him tow my car without proper authorization, and that if he tried, I would file a police report for theft. He looked at me. He looked at his clipboard. He told me he would call his dispatcher. He walked away and made the call. 2 minutes later, he came back and told me the dispatcher said to leave the car and mark the call as refused by resident. He got in his truck and left. I took photos of my car in the assigned spot. I took a photo of my parking permit hanging from the mirror. I took a photo of the painted spot number on the curb that matched my unit assignment. Then I called Jen back on speaker. I told her what just happened. She told me that was harassment and possibly illegal depending on state law. She told me to file a police report to create a paper trail. She told me to send everything to Linda in writing and CC the corporate management office if Riverstone was managed by a larger company. She told me to check my lease or HOA docs for the towing policy because most associations are required to follow specific notice and tagging procedures before they can tow. I thanked her. I pulled up the bylaws again. The towing section was clear. Vehicles must be tagged with a 72-hour warning notice before tow. Tow authorization must be approved by the property manager, not by committee members acting alone. Emergency tows for blocking fire lanes or safety hazards are exempt, but all other tows require documentation and notice. I had no tag on my car. I had no warning notice. The tow driver had a work order but no proper authorization. I wrote everything up in an email to Linda and CC'd the Riverstone corporate office address listed on the website. I attached the photos. I attached the bylaws excerpt. I explained that this was the second retaliation attempt in 2 days, and that I was filing a police report. I hit send. Then I drove to the police station. The officer at the front desk listened to my story. He told me it sounded like a civil dispute and that I should consult an attorney. I told him I understood that, but I wanted to file a report for documentation purposes in case it escalated further. He told me he could take an incident report, but that it would not result in any criminal investigation unless there was evidence of theft or fraud. I told him I had doorbell camera footage showing the person who accused me actually stealing packages herself. He looked more interested. He told me to email him the footage and he would forward it to the property crimes unit. I sent him the video Marcus had given me. He gave me an incident report number. I left. Wednesday, Linda called me. She told me she received my email and the corporate office was now involved. She told me the tow call was not authorized by her or by any property manager. She told me it appeared someone called the tow company directly and used Riverstone's account without proper approval. She told me the tow company confirmed they received the call from a woman who identified herself as Architectural Committee and provided the account number. Linda told me that was a violation of multiple policies and that the person who made the call would be subject to disciplinary action up to and including removal from the committee. She did not say Dawn's name, but we both knew. Linda also told me she reviewed the portal logs and found that my appeal file had been deleted from the back end 3 hours after I submitted it. She told me the deletion was traced to an admin login tied to Dawn's credentials. She told me this was a serious breach and that the management company was conducting a full audit of all recent committee actions and portal activity. She told me my fine was dismissed and that I would receive a formal letter confirming that within 3 business days. She told me if I had any additional concerns, I should bring them to her attention immediately. I asked her about the clubhouse storage closet thefts. She told me she could not comment on active investigations, but that several residents had filed complaints and the matter was being reviewed. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Marcus and told him it was time to go public. He posted the doorbell footage in the neighborhood chat with a short caption. Camera footage from mail cluster on the night of the alleged locker break-in. This is what actually happened. The chat exploded. Within an hour, there were over 50 comments. People sharing their own stories about missing packages, missing tools, Dawn showing up unannounced to do inspections, Dawn threatening fines for minor violations while ignoring identical violations by her friends. One resident posted a photo of a torn padded mailer she found in the parking lot near the mail cluster with a mailing label addressed to her. Another resident posted a screenshot of a portal complaint submission that returned a file not found error when he tried to view it weeks later. Thursday morning, I got a text from Dawn. It was the first direct contact from her since the management office confrontation. The text said, "You will regret this." I screenshotted it immediately and forwarded it to Linda. Linda called me 10 minutes later. She told me Dawn had been placed on administrative leave from the committee, pending the outcome of the investigation. She told me Dawn was not permitted to contact residents about committee business or access the portal. She told me the text I received was a violation of that directive and that she was forwarding it to corporate and potentially to legal counsel. She told me if I received any further contact from Dawn, I should not respond and should forward it to her immediately. I told her I would. Friday, I had to work a job site in Kenosha, so I left early and did not get home until after 7. When I pulled into my parking spot, there was a bright orange traffic cone sitting on the curb next to my car. I got out and looked at it. There was a printed notice zip-tied to the cone. The notice had Riverstone letterhead and said the vehicle parked in this spot was under investigation for permit violations and was subject to tow if not moved within 24 hours. I took a photo. I picked up the cone and the notice and brought them inside. I called Linda. She did not answer. I left a voicemail describing what I found. Then I texted her the photo. She responded within 5 minutes. That notice is not official. Do not move your car. I am handling this. Saturday morning, I woke up to a knock on my door. It was Linda and a man in a suit I had never seen before. Linda introduced him as the regional property manager overseeing the Riverstone account. His name was Tom. He told me he wanted to speak with me about the situation. I invited them in. We sat at my kitchen table. Tom told me the management company had completed the initial phase of the audit and that the findings were serious. He told me Dawn had accessed the portal admin panel over 30 times in the last 6 months and deleted or modified multiple resident submissions, complaints, and appeal files. He told me she had also used her committee access to authorize vendor calls, including tow calls, without proper property manager approval. He told me the company had identified at least 8 residents who were affected by these actions, including me. Tom told me the company was offering a formal apology and a settlement to affected residents to cover any fees, fines, or damages incurred as a result of Dawn's actions. He told me my settlement would include dismissal of all fines, reimbursement for any costs related to the dispute, including my time off work to deal with it, and a guarantee that my record would be cleared, and that no further action would be taken related to the locker incident or any other matter Dawn had raised. He told me the company was also terminating Dawn's committee position immediately and referring the matter to local police for potential criminal charges related to theft and fraud. He handed me a settlement agreement. I read it. It was fair. I signed it. Tom also told me that a management audit that exposes the pattern had revealed Dawn had been skimming petty cash from the clubhouse activity fund and taking supplies, including cleaning products, light bulbs, and office supplies, for personal use. He told me the total estimated loss was over $2,000. He told me the police had been notified and that Dawn was likely going to be charged. He told me the management company was also reviewing its vendor relationships and admin access protocols to prevent similar issues in the future. He thanked me for bringing the matter to their attention and told me that if I had any further concerns, I should contact him directly. He gave me his card. Then he and Linda left. Sunday afternoon, I got a call from Marcus. He told me Dawn had been arrested. He told me the police showed up at her unit that morning and took her out in handcuffs. He told me neighbors saw the whole thing and someone recorded it. He told me the charges included theft, fraud, and tampering with records. He told me the neighborhood chat was going absolutely insane and that people were posting their own stories and evidence. He told me at least 3 other residents were talking to attorneys about filing civil suits against Dawn for damages. I told him I was not surprised. I told him I was just glad it was over. But it was not over yet. Monday morning, I had to go to the management office one more time to pick up my formal clearance letter and settlement check. Linda met me at the front desk. She handed me an envelope. She told me everything was finalized and that my record was clear. She apologized again for what I went through. Then she told me there was one more thing. She told me a regional supervisor is only in town today, and this is my one chance to get eyes on the file, so she wanted to introduce me. She walked me back to the conference room. Tom was there with another woman I had not met. Linda introduced her as the corporate compliance director. Her name was Janet. Janet told me the company took the situation very seriously, and that they were implementing new protocols to prevent similar abuses. She told me all committee members would be required to complete ethics training. She told me admin portal access would be restricted and audited quarterly. She told me the company was also reviewing the bylaws to clarify enforcement procedures and resident rights. She thanked me for my patience and for documenting everything so thoroughly. She told me my evidence was critical to the investigation, and that without it, the company might not have discovered the full extent of the problem. I thanked her. Then I asked her what was going to happen with Dawn. Janet told me she could not comment on individual personnel matters, but that Dawn was no longer employed by or affiliated with Riverstone in any capacity, and that the HOA must accept video evidence under a written procedure going forward as part of the updated enforcement policy. I left the office and went home. I sat on my couch and opened the envelope. Inside was a letter on Riverstone letterhead confirming that all violations associated with my account had been dismissed, and that no further action would be taken. There was also a check for $1,200 covering the settlement amount Tom had described. I took a photo of the letter. I texted it to Jen. She called me immediately. She told me I handled it perfectly. She told me most people would have either paid the fine to avoid the hassle or escalated too fast and lost credibility. She told me I did it right by staying calm, keeping records, and letting the process work. I told her I could not have done it without her advice. She told me to take the win and move on. That night I went to the mailbox cluster to check my mail. There was a new notice posted on the community bulletin board. It was from the management company. The notice announced that Dawn Fletcher was no longer affiliated with Riverstone Neighborhood Association in any capacity, and that residents with concerns about committee actions should contact the management office directly. The notice also announced upcoming changes to the enforcement and appeals process and invited residents to attend an informational meeting the following week. I took a photo of the notice. Then I walked back to my unit. Tuesday, I ran into Claire at the mailbox cluster again. She told me she heard what happened and that she was glad I stood up to Dawn. She told me a lot of people were too scared to say anything because Dawn had a reputation for retaliating. She told me she was relieved Dawn was gone and that the neighborhood already felt different. She told me people were talking to each other more and sharing information instead of keeping their heads down. She told me it felt like a weight had been lifted. I told her I was glad I could help. She thanked me and walked away. Wednesday, I got an email from the police property crimes unit. The officer told me they had reviewed the doorbell footage I submitted and that it was being used as evidence in the criminal case against Dawn. He told me I might be contacted for a statement or to testify if the case went to trial. He told me the charges included multiple counts of theft and one count of official misconduct related to her position on the committee. He thanked me for coming forward and told me the case was strong. Thursday, I went back to work. My foreman asked me how the HOA thing went. I told him it was resolved and that the person causing the problem was arrested. He laughed. He told me HOA people are crazy and that he would never live somewhere with one. I told him it was not all bad, just that one person had too much power and no oversight. He told me that is how it always goes. I told him he was probably right. Friday afternoon, I got a text from Marcus. He told me Dawn's criminal case was moving forward and that she was facing up to 3 years if convicted on all counts. He told me the management company had also filed a civil suit to recover the stolen funds and damages. He told me the neighborhood chat was still buzzing about it and that people were treating me like a hero. I told him I was not a hero, I just kept receipts. He told me that is exactly what a hero does. Saturday morning, I woke up and made coffee. I sat on my couch and opened my laptop. I logged into the Riverstone portal. My account was clean. No violations. No pending actions. No fines. I clicked through the activity log. All my submissions were there and they all opened correctly. I clicked on the appeals section. There was a new form available, appeal submission with automatic confirmation and tracking. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The parking lot was quiet. My car was in my assigned spot. There was no orange cone. There was no threatening notice. There was no dawn. That afternoon, I went to the management office one last time to drop off my signed settlement agreement. Linda was at the front desk. She told me she was glad everything worked out. She told me the company had received positive feedback from residents about the new transparency measures, and that the informational meeting scheduled for next week already had over 50 RSVPs. She told me it felt like a fresh start for the community. I told her I hoped so. Then I told her I appreciated her help and that I knew she was in a tough position. She told me she was just doing her job. I told her she did it well. She smiled. I left. That night I called Jen one more time. I told her the whole story from start to finish. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she told me I should write it down because people needed to hear stories like this. She told me too many people think you cannot fight back against HOAs or bureaucratic bullies, but you can if you stay calm and document everything. She told me I was proof that the system works if you work the system. I told her I would think about it. She told me to enjoy the win and take care of myself. I told her I would. Sunday I went for a walk around the complex. I passed the mail cluster. I passed the clubhouse. I passed the management office. I passed the parking lot where the tow truck had tried to take my car. Everything looked normal. Everything felt normal. But it was not the same as before. The community felt different. People were more aware. People were asking questions. People were holding the HOA accountable. And that felt like the real win. Monday morning I went back to work. I pulled into the job site lot and parked next to my foreman's truck. He walked over and handed me a coffee. He told me he read the email I sent him over the weekend with the full story. He told me it was insane and that I handled it like a pro. He told me if I ever needed a reference for anything, he would vouch for me anytime. I thanked him. Then we went inside and got to work. That week I got a letter in the mail from the Milwaukee County District Attorney's office. It was a victim impact statement form for Dawn's criminal case. The letter explained that I could submit a written statement describing how her actions affected me, and that the statement would be considered during sentencing if she was convicted. I filled out the form. I kept it short and factual. I described the false accusations, the deleted portal records, the attempted illegal tow, the harassment, and the public humiliation attempt. I described the time I lost from work, the stress, and the damage to my reputation in the community. I signed it and mailed it back. 2 weeks later, I got a call from the prosecutor's office. The assistant DA told me Dawn had accepted a plea deal. She pled guilty to theft and official misconduct. The other charges were dropped. She was sentenced to 18 months probation, 200 hours of community service, and ordered to pay restitution to the HOA and affected residents. The assistant DA told me I would receive a restitution check within 90 days. She thanked me for my cooperation. I thanked her and hung up. That afternoon, Marcus texted me. He told me the HOA board had scheduled a special election to fill Dawn's vacant committee seat, and that 3 residents had already announced they were running. He told me people were asking if I was going to run. I told him absolutely not. I told him I had zero interest in being on the committee. He told me he did not blame me. He told me he was going to vote for the candidate who promised the most transparency and the least drama. I told him that was a good plan. A month later, the new committee member was elected. Her name was Diane, and she was a retired teacher. She ran on a platform of open communication, fair enforcement, and resident engagement. She won by a landslide. At her first committee meeting, she proposed a new policy requiring all committee decisions to be documented and published in the monthly newsletter. The motion passed unanimously. She also proposed quarterly town halls, where residents could ask questions and raise concerns directly with the committee and management. That motion also passed. People were optimistic. 3 months after Dawn's arrest, I got the restitution check in the mail. It was for $642. It covered the cost of my time off work to deal with the dispute, the cost of printing and documenting everything, and a portion of the legal consultation fee I paid to an attorney who reviewed my settlement agreement before I signed it. I deposited the check. I used part of it to take Jen out to dinner the next time she was in town. I used the rest to buy a new dash cam for my car, just in case. 6 months after everything started, I was walking to my car after work when I saw Dawn in the parking lot of a grocery store 2 miles from Riverstone. She was getting into her car. She saw me. We made eye contact. She looked away immediately and got in her car fast. She drove off without looking back. I stood there for a second. Then I got in my car and drove home. I never saw her again. A year later, Riverstone held its annual meeting. I went because the new committee was presenting the updated bylaws and enforcement procedures. The meeting was packed. Over 100 residents showed up. Diane presented the changes. The new procedures included mandatory documentation for all violations, a transparent appeals process with third-party review, restrictions on committee member access to vendor accounts, and quarterly audits of all financial transactions. The residents voted to approve the changes with only 2 votes against. After the meeting, several people came up to me and thanked me for what I did. I told them I just stood up for myself. They told me that was exactly what the community needed. I told them I was glad it helped. These days, Riverstone feels different. The enforcement is still there, but it is fair. The rules are still there, but they are applied evenly. The committee is still there, but they are accountable. And Dawn is gone. The HOA must accept video evidence under a written procedure, and they do. The management company follows the bylaws, and they do. The community feels safer, more transparent, and more like a place people actually want to live. And that is the real payoff. I still live at Riverstone. I still park in my assigned spot. I still check my mail at the cluster. I still see Marcus and Claire and Linda and the other neighbors who helped me through it. And every time I walk past the management office, I think about the day I walked in with my folder of evidence and refused to back down. I think about the day Dawn tried to shame me in front of everyone, and it backfired. I think about the day a receptionist corrects Karen out loud while Karen keeps insisting she is right and the staff just shuts her down. I think about the day the system actually worked, because I made it work. And I think about the bright orange traffic cone Dawn used to set down like she owned the sidewalk. The cone is gone now. Someone threw it away after Dawn was removed from the committee. But I still see it in my head every time I walk past that spot. It is a reminder that people like Dawn exist. They use fear and intimidation and selective enforcement to control others. They abuse their power because they think no one will stop them. But they are wrong. Because someone will. Someone who keeps receipts. Someone who stays calm. Someone who works the system instead of letting the system work them. I am that someone. And if it happens again, I will be ready. Because I still have my folder, I still have my screenshots, I still have my evidence bag, and I still know how to fight back. Keep your sanity, and I will catch you next time.